Greetings, fellow Emblemites. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
7 years ago, we set out to celebrate the films of Steven Spielberg by providing commentary on the works he never did. After all, he's done so much for us, it was the least we could do for him. Tonight, the journey has come to its inevitable end. After the personal story of the Fablemans, we transitioned from commentaries to retrospectives for the stories that remained. Why? Because it took an archaeological dig to access some of those gems, and we got a memo. So, for what could possibly be the final time, at least in an official capacity, let's kick the old can full of movie magic around and ride our bikes against the moon one last time on
Spielberg
Month.
Month.
Do
Do,
do
do,
do
do,
do do
do,
do
do,
do
do,
do
do,
do do
do,
do do. Dragon, isn't it appropriate that, like, literally the last freaking thing we do on Spielberg Month, the movie literally opens with, hey, let's play a game out of humming theme songs?
Yep.
All right, so we are not talking about the entire Twilight Zone movie here, folks. We are just talking about Kick the Can. But it's so weird, Dragon, because I really feel like, in spite of this arguably maybe being the best segment out of all of them, because I did rewatch the whole movie, I think this is the one that kind of gets forgotten about a little bit, in spite of the fact that it's Spielberg and it's very high quality. Because if you think about it, like, the first segment, I would say, is definitively the worst one in the movie, but it's also the one that has the infamous helicopter crash stuff attached to it. So, no one's forgetting about that. And then the last two, you have two of the most memorable segments in the original Twilight Zone, and Kick the Can also was from the original Twilight Zone, but I feel like those other two are just, like, really iconic, whereas Kick the Can was kind of like more of a personal fan favorite. So this one does kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit, but like I said, Dragon, rewatching the movie as a whole, I definitely think this is probably the strongest segment out of all of them. Not for nothing because Spielberg directed it, but it's just got a lot of really good character work, really packed into a tight sort of. I believe the runtime's right around 30 minutes, maybe a little less. So it's a very interesting final piece to cover on Spielberg Month. It's really interesting because, like, as the final piece, it's very much characters, like, looking back on their life and yet trying to retain that youthful energy and that sense of adventure. And I kind of feel like Spielberg himself is, like, sort of mirrors the characters in this movie, in this short. Nowadays, with his sort of, he is very much a master of his craft who has grown old, but is still very, very whimsical in nature when he talks about film, and is very, obviously incredibly enthusiastic. So there's some interesting layers here. I don't necessarily think this is, like, the most memorable thing to, like, end out all of Spielberg Month on, but it's definitely unique because it's the one thing we've tackled that's not just a straight movie. That's a segment that he directed. So just overall, what are your thoughts, Dragon? I'm sorry, I know I rambled there a little bit.
Yeah, so this is this is a nice and simple short with for sure a complicated history, which we'll break down. But it's I mean, here's the thing. It is interesting in historical capacity, especially as given what we do on Spielberg Month, and that and how we started this last installment of it, where we have the Fablemans, which very much ends on Spielberg about to begin his TV directing career, via the Sammy Fableman character, and this is essentially this short, the whole Twilight Zone movie project is essentially in tribute to what inspired Spielberg and what really got his career started in the first place. He directed the knockoff of the Twilight Zone. He did the
Yep.
first episode of it. So this is really bringing him full circle in many respects, like of his career as an official filmmaker. So this is very much kind of like a closing the loop thing. Unfortunately, it is mired in tragedy, and for reasons I'll get into, and you can kind of see it in the short when you look at it, is that Spielberg is kind of phoning this one in. But again, historically, you look back on it, it's like this is kind of a commentary that's always going on with Spielberg. Where his critics are always saying he over sentimentalizes things. Where that is definitely here, and that's intentionally here, though. That's intentionally here. So it's like it's him revisiting his roots, but by the same token, though, it's like him like aware of like, yeah, this is this. It was like it's almost in some on some subtle level for him. I think it's like kind of a crossroads moment of like, what kind of movies do I want to do? What kind of stuff do I want to make? And I think that this is he's kind of like a few crossroad points where you have you have 1941 before this, which is kind of like him at a low point. And then he's kind of trying to diversify, and this is kind of around the period of time where he's getting ambitious with what he wants to do. Where he's doing a lot more producing after that. He's doing producing. He's he's producing. He's doing things that aren't like a full movie. So again, Spielberg getting creative with things. So I think there's a lot. There's a lot in this, and I think there are a lot of good elements that do get overshadowed. So again, it's a nice. I look at this thing as a nice full circle story form. I can't say that it stands shoulder to shoulder with some of the other stuff that's in the Twilight Zone, the movie, but I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad, but I think it's kind of the Twilight Zone movie is kind of a sticky wicket because nothing's ever going to touch the original Twilight Zone, even if you do remake it with the best of actors. Because at the end of the day, it's not in black and white. At the end of the day, it's not. There's no Rod Serling.
There was a painful lack of Rod Serling in this movie, Dragon. I don't know who the heck that narrator was, but he was not doing a great job for me.
You didn't find out, did you?
Who was the narrator?
You want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna love this. It was Burgess Meredith.
Oh man. Okay.
And you know why that's significant.
Well, yeah, of course, because he has.
Time.
There was time now.
So of course, but he made multiple appearances on Twilight Zone.
Of course, yeah.
So that's the thing. So Burgess,
all due respect to him, he's obviously an icon of the industry. But as far as narration goes, man, he ain't no Serling.
That's true. Also, one thing to note before we start breaking things down, this movie, it's 40th anniversary, which is another reason one of the reasons we decided to end out on it. And also, again, I believe in not the same day, because unfortunately, because of the way things broke down this month, we couldn't put it exactly on the same day and Spielberg Month with it. But then this month, 40 years ago, Twilight Zone movie.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, what background can you tell us beyond the fact that the production of one of these shorts ended in disaster? We all know about that.
I know. Look, I'm not going to just get into the weeds of what happened there. I'm going to tell you there is a domino effect that does happen.
Well, I'm sure there was.
So
yeah.
let me tell you a little bit. Let me before and after that for you.
Okay.
So Rod Serling had been pitching a Twilight Zone film ever since the cancellation of the show, and that's thing. It wasn't like a painful cancellation for him because again, Twilight Zone was like at the top of its game. It wasn't like.
I feel like by the time Twilight Zone ended, it was kind of starting to get into that territory where some of the stories were sort of repeating themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was less. I think it was less running out of ideas. I think it was more just like the genre was kind of changing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to remember, well, you know this better than I. Rod Serling, a lot of his wartime PTSD was kind of filtered through the Twilight Zone. Yeah, so it was kind of cathartic and therapeutic for him. So at a certain point, it's like how much it's kind of like a guy gets healthy, he doesn't really need to tell the same stories over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
That said, sadly, he had trouble getting work after this in terms of, let me put it this way, not so much getting work, but getting work that he had the same amount of creative control over because Twilight Zone was his baby. That was all him. So a lot of things that he would go to is like, there'd be a lot of meddling from studios and stuff that always kind of like got him down. So the big thing, and also he kind of had like one of those deals where he sold the syndication rights, which was a huge mistake then.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the sad thing that it was.
Do
Sort
you
of
know if selling the syndication rights kind of like was a domino effect that led to Disney being able to do the Tower of Terror?
I mean, it stands to reason.
Uh-huh.
It would stand to reason, but I can't. I'd have to look into it to really know for sure. And even so, I don't even know if I can find that one out.
Fair enough.
Okay, here's what you do need to know, though. Okay, so towards the end, one of the last things Rod Serling did was Night Gallery. This is where we get into the big crossover with Spielberg. So he did Night Gallery. Now, Night Gallery, essentially, for those who may not be aware, as I know we've kind of mentioned it, we haven't really said what the heck Night Gallery was. Night Gallery was essentially an update on the Twilight Zone they did, I believe, in the 70s. It was actually, sorry, 60 to 69. It was between 69 and I think 73. Between 69 and 73, however long it went on. Like bridging into the 70s, basically, it was Twilight Zone with a different framing device. You had Rod Serling, but he was in color, and he was walking through this cool night like art gallery set, like in blackness. But you had like these paintings, and the paintings were like the correlation, like the reveal of like oh, this is what happened in our twisted tale tonight. So yeah, and that was Spielberg's first job. I believe he directed the pilot, in fact, of Night Gallery. And in that pilot, in that episode that Spielberg directed, it was Joan Crawford. That was the big Joan Crawford thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So sadly, Rod Serling, he died frustrated with the industry, again looking for a project that he could have control, because he got frustrated in Night Gallery. Night Gallery's like, hey, we want the Twilight Zone guy, do our thing. So he died in apropos, he died in 75. That's when obviously Spielberg takes off with Jaws, so it's kind of like as he goes, Spielberg rises. So he died age 50, sadly enough. And the bigger tragedy is that he never saw the resurgence in the 80s for the Twilight, and that's when all the repeats really happened. So that's when he would have seen, like, it still would have been like a big hurt to his wallet of like, oh man, I don't get a dime from any of this. But yeah, so Serling, he was shopping around a movie, because the movie was going to be his comeback for like something to do the Twilight Zone, because he wasn't able to do it anymore. So he put forward the idea of doing the movie. So eventually Warner Brothers pitches it to Spielberg. Now Spielberg was obsessed with the Twilight Zone. He loved the Twilight Zone as a kid, which is why he jumped at the chance to do Night Gallery. And yeah, so he's always tried to put a Twilight Zone vibe in some of his early stuff, like Duel.
Duel does feel very Twilight Zone. It really does.
It does. So again, that's basically a loving homage to the Twilight Zone. Fun fact: the guy who wrote Duel, the original story for Duel, and he brought on to write the movie version of Duel as well, Richard Matheson, he was a writer on the Twilight Zone.
I mean, weirdly enough, even Sugarland Express, like obviously nothing to do with sci-fi, but that ending is almost a little Twilight Zone-esque with how, darkly ironic it is.
That's the thing. It seems like it's a lighter version of it, but yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Regardless, it's fun fact, like Richard Matheson was like, at the time, he was like one of the surviving Twilight Zone writers on that you could go to, and he wrote, with the exception of the John Landis section, he wrote all the shorts he wrote all the segments for this, because it was Spielberg trying to get the tone of the Twilight Zone, so he got the original Twilight Zone writer to readapt the work. Let's see. So, okay, so Spielberg saw an opportunity to team up. So apparently, we were kind of questioning this last time, so we were kind of half right. So Spielberg is friends, at least was friends with John Landis. And he's basically looking for, he cameoed in 1941, so he's looking for an opportunity to kind of team up with his pal John Landis. So this was the opportunity. I assume they both were Twilight Zone fans, and he's like, "Hey, come on for it. Let's team up. Let's do this." So this is John Landis at the top of his career, by the way. He had all the movies were out. You had Blues Brothers, you had Animal House.
Much the peak.
Yep, this is at the peak. So yeah, so this is Landis kind of at the peak. So the duo kind of like they were running point on this. So you ultimately had the cell there. He ran roughly 4 segments and a prologue with 4 different directors, 4 different styles. So because Spielberg mainly was going to produce it, and then Landis and Spielberg would produce it, and then they direct a few segments. And they bring on some new talent that they've liked. So Landis, you had You had Landis, you had Spielberg, you had Joe Dante, very early Joe Dante.
Oh yeah.
This is like him after Piranhas, I think. I think it's probably before Gremlins, I think.
I think it was. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Gremlins is shortly after this. And George
Remember,
Miller.
Spielberg was very flattered by Piranha.
I know, yeah, that's the thing. He was very flattered by the Jaws parody that was Piranha. And George Miller, he didn't go on to do anything.
Nah.
Like some like it was like some knockoff of Duel or something.
Yeah, basically.
Small indie fare, not really for like.
I will say I do not like any of the Mad Max movies besides Fury Road as much as I like Duel. I'll say that much.
That's fair. Okay, so let's see. So okay, so Landis did the prologue. Let's see, Landis did the prologue and Time Out, which was an original story compared to the other three. Now Spielberg, because Spielberg initially was going to do an original kind of restructuring of the Mask episode from Twilight Zone.
Oh man, yeah, that's a biggie. That's one of the ones people go to for like all-time best Twilight Zone twists.
So he was going to do basically the core idea of that, but it was going to be kids at Halloween wearing the mask of their costumes and turning. Yeah.
So it was going to be the haunted mask.
Essentially, yes.
That's awesome.
So that was the initial idea, and then it shifted into an even better one. A lot of people really loved from the Twilight Zone. That was much more up Spielberg's alley. I believe it's let's see, it's the monsters do on Maple Street.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what Spielberg was supposed to do. And for those who may not, I guess the sum is it's paranoia that aliens are invading the neighborhood.
Which was also kind of like a metaphor for like Cold War / wartime paranoia in general.
Obviously, post DT, you had a lot of similarities to Spielberg's style.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the one Spielberg they settled on that. And Spielberg was going to do that. And we're going to get to what had happened there. So Joe Dante did basically a reworking of A Good Life, which again that was a full-on adaptation, but the Joe Dante version of it with the Joe Dante effects and everything.
I feel like It's a Good Life was the most kind of like one-for-one adaptation from the original.
Sure, and then you have George Miller doing kind of an update on Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which of course you have to do if you're doing a Twilight Zone movie. You have to do Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Which I will say, like, Lithgow was great in Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Don't get me wrong, he's awesome. But I'm sorry, Dragon. I am so attached to the Shatner version of that.
We all are. I mean, let's be honest.
I just don't think it compares. I mean, the Shatner version of that story, just the way it's paced, the way it's perfect.
That's true. Also, it's directed by Richard Donner. What do you expect? But yeah, that's the thing. The only update you really needed was like a better looking Gremlin, and we did that.
No, honestly, though, I prefer the look of the Gremlin in the original.
Really? I mean,
yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so now obviously, without getting too into, there was a very horrifying tragedy that occurred during the production of John Landis's segment, the Time Out segment with Vic Morrow and the two children. So what happened, just to give you context without getting to the gruesome details, so the studio wanted to increase the Vic Morrow character's likability. They wanted to give him like a redemptive scene. So they said, okay, here's some, like, I don't know if they said, here's some money, or basically, hey, go back and add in like a scene to redeem him. That was the idea. Is like, okay, so while he's in the Vietnam like flash during that short, he would save two Vietnamese kids.
Oh man,
that's so the studio came up with that
God
idea.
Damn it.
So basically, John Landis, assuming they pressed for time, or basically like kind of having to add a scene on the fly, he sadly cut some corners. I'll leave moral arbitration up to you folks, but essentially he kind of shot a little fast and loose. Kind of got some kids who were not necessarily child actors in that scene, and yeah, tragedy killed the three of them. That was horrible. And here's where we get to the how it ties into Spielberg. Spielberg was very traumatized by this whole affair, by everything about this. He wanted to pull out of the movie entirely. He did.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
So, I mean, for many reasons. I mean, I think fundamentally, whether it be from a career or moral standpoint, it was the fact that he feared that audiences would never trust him. Audiences or parents would never trust him with like child actors or kids starring in his movies again.
Which, I mean, that's legitimately a fair concern, especially when you consider like he is probably the best director of child actors
Exactly.
in the industry.
So this is not only a PR nightmare for Spielberg, but just an ethical thing of just like, what am I? Oh my God, just to be associated with this production. And I'm sure Spielberg probably felt some guilt of like, I love the Twilight Zone. I wanted a Twilight Zone movie. I did not expect this to happen.
Right, yeah. It's obviously like, it's one of those things in Hollywood. It's just going to go down as like one of the most shocking Hollywood stories always.
So ultimately what happened was, so Spielberg was traumatized by it for many reasons, and his lawyers said, because again, Landis did face charges. He had to go to court over this whole affair and everything. So Spielberg was possibly on the hook as well. So what ultimately he was thinking, he wanted to pull out entirely. His lawyers said it would look really bad if he make him look like he's really guilty if he pulled out of the thing. Now, reluctantly, he stayed on. He didn't want to stay on, but reluctantly he did. And this is what happened. So he wanted to compensate for, he knew there was going to be a lot of mired tragedy and everything. He knew everyone's going to be feeling bummed out, especially after starting with the Vic Morrow segment. So he wanted to go super optimistic. So he kind of had an optimistic slant on the, on Kick the Cans. That's why he wanted to kick the can, even though his heart, and you can kind of tell his heart wasn't really in it. And you can tell he's trying to put some sugar in the really sour situation that's going on in the movie. So that's why there's a lot of there may be some extra whimsy or extra kind of Spielberg dipping into what his critics have kind of
yeah, very much so.
But again, importantly though, that's Spielberg compensating. That's not really Spielberg just like haplessly. He's not doing it unintentionally. He's doing it like, sure. I know the critics are gonna eat me alive on it, but it's the moral thing to do. I gotta perk up the audience. It's So of course, also so the movie comes out. Sadly, overall, the movie is very overshadowed by the controversy. Spielberg's short is overshadowed by the others and the controversy. And sadly, I don't know. I'd like to think they patched things up over the years, but sadly, Spielberg and John Landis they're falling out after this. Because of what happened.
Little Blue points that out. He says after the helicopter incident, Spielberg ended his friendship with Landis.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of sad to see any friendship end. I mean, I'd like to think maybe things.
I've definitely heard Max Landis talk about his memories of this time and how John Landis very much got he basically became a pariah in the industry.
He did.
So it's a really interesting. I mean, like obviously, like interesting might not be the right word, but it's a very like I said, like this movie it's always going to be associated with that. And it's kind of like darkly fitting that the Twilight Zone movie has this super dark, connection to it.
It's very ironic in that sense. So yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote. I mean, I have a few things I'll say from when we talk about the thing, but yeah.
All right, so Little Blue, like I said, he's in the comments. Richard's victim, also is. He says it's sad that Jordan Peele hosted the Twilight Zone show. Wasn't that good because he could have done a really good Twilight Zone show. I agree. I tried to watch a couple episodes of that. I was hyped for it when it was first announced. I just don't think Jordan Peele was that hands-on with it besides being the host. I think if it was really like if he really got knee deep and really developed it for a couple of years and wrote a lot of the episodes, I think that would have turned out better. Also, he says Empire of the Sun is the best Twilight Zone story.
I don't know about that.
Dragon, I think the clear answer for what is the best Spielberg Twilight Zone story is The Color Purple. Just like it's the best sex comedy of Spielberg's career. I'm sorry. All right, you want to jump into it? Do we have anything else with background?
No, that's it. Let's get into it.
Okay.
So again, Burgess Meredith providing the narration as our transition.
Yeah, and like I said, Burgess Meredith, like obviously an icon of the industry, but I don't know, his narrations always just felt off to me.
He died for your sins, Tiki.
No, he didn't.
Well, no, I mean Rocky he did, but sure. Rocky 3 he did,
Oh my god.
Anyway. So, Kick the Can. Yeah, so let's talk about the incomparable Scatman Crothers.
I mean, he is very much like, say what you will about how sentimental and syrupy this gets. This dude is so magnetic on screen.
He is.
I'm not even sure if it's like cool to like, compare him to this performance in particular, but he very much reminds me. He's got like the same sort of like very warm energy that like a James Baskett as Uncle Remus had. That was kind of the performance that it reminded me of, honestly.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, a lot of people have pointed this out more in the critical side of things. They've said, there's definitely the old trope of the magical black person with him. But I mean, look, I like to think that his performance is so charismatic. You're not really thinking about that. You're just looking at him as like a charming old man, who then becomes kind of magical, kind of in an ambiguous way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, because by proxy of that, it is on my mind. Like, magical folksy black man. That is familiar.
yeah. I mean, I guess that is kind of partly where the Uncle.
Well, say what you will about Song of the South. I mean, Uncle Remus, he's a nice man.
I think Uncle Remus is probably like the one element of Song of the South that people are like okay with.
Well, I mean, it'd be really, really, really weird if like we don't like the black man in Song of the South. Well, what are you saying about your whole reason for not liking Song of the South? It's.
You know what I like in Song of the South, Dragon? I love the cuckoo clock. Because when the big hand gets to the top, watch out! All right, I'm sorry, that's an inside joke.
Anyway.
Okay.
So, point being, we like us some Carruthers.
It is a funny name for a trope.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, he is. I mean, the really interesting thing about this performance for me is that it's like right around the time of The Shining, which is like the other big thing that I know him from.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's in some ways it's kind of similar performances. But whereas with The Shining, there's kind of like an element of like, okay, this dude seems like he means well, but, with The Shining, like, basically with everything going through that movie, there's an air of, like, is he on the level? Is he even fucking real? He could be a ghost. We don't know. Whereas this is more so he's just a delightful person who's just wanting to bring joy into people's lives. He's basically like a Santa Claus for old people.
Pretty much. No, he is, yeah.
So, I don't know, like, as far as the Spielberg directing goes, like, Dragon, I agree, like, it's not like we're getting a whole lot of, I mean, honestly, 1941, I feel like we almost kind of, like, peaked as far as just, like, the Sammy Fableman playing with his toys of it all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But... I mean, obviously, I think Spielberg has a really nice way of shooting nighttime scenes, which is very, very prevalent here.
So something to mention with that, Alan Davio, he the past Alan Davio, he was a cinematographer on this. Of course, he's known for E.T. and kind of the smoky kind of night shots like this.
Of course, yeah, right, exactly.
So with our debate of schmaltz, we should also point out Jerry Goldsmith did the score for this. Now, fun fact about Jerry Goldsmith. I mean, you know Jerry Goldsmith, don't you?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, Goldsmith, for the kids out there. Goldsmith was always like John Williams' rival.
God.
That's the thing. He was plus he was like the old man that John Williams was like. It's so funny because now they're both old. Well, John Williams is an old man now, very obviously. But it's just kind of like the fact that Goldsmith was like was like, oh, that Williams kid, he's stealing all my business.
Right.
Because every time it's like, oh boy, I could do the score for Superman, like Williams. And it was like, hey, Jaws, Williams. Okay, to be fair, Jaws might have been a different case. There's been a lot of competition for that. But then again, for every time we don't have a John Williams, you have usually a Jerry Goldsmith, or you have like him, Goldsmith, doing Poltergeist,
sure,
or Gremlins, for example, or Mulan, even, if you can believe it.
He did all the Zemeckis scores, right?
No, it's not. You're thinking Silvestri.
Oh, you're right. I am thinking of
I
Sylvester.
don't
Yeah.
know if it was old. I mean, the Back to the Future was Sylvester. I don't know,
Uh-huh.
and Roger Rabbit. I don't know beyond that if he did all. Sylvester did all. Oh, actually, you know what? I think he did Polar Express. I don't know. Maybe he did them all. I don't know. The point he did a lot of them.
Uh-huh.
That was Silvestri, not Goldsmith. Anyway, but yeah. So the point in Goldsmith's, he's been in the business since the '50s, so he long predates John Williams. And
Oh
sadly,
yeah.
he passed in '04, and you can tell they did a nice little tribute for him. Because here's the thing: when they did the director's cut of Superman 2, like one of the versions of Superman 2, Goldsmith was always like the backup option when they couldn't get John Williams. So he did he assisted in the score for the sequel, and I believe like when we did Superman 3 and 4, I think they got Goldsmith instead of Williams. I'm blanking on that. The point being, Jerry Goldsmith, very, very talented composer. He's like, up there with John Williams. They did a good job here.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very, I feel like the score does kind of lead to the whimsical sort of nature of it too.
Oh yeah, it facilitates for sure.
You know what? You know what movie I absolutely think kind of is like in the DNA of this, actually, when it comes to Spielberg, is Hook.
Absolutely. There's very much, there's a lot of shades of Hook here, especially the way we kind of play with perspective. Well, obviously we're playing with perspective and how the old people kind of see themselves. And that was like the reveal in which, they make the choice to become old again. And but we kind of play like a perspective shift. It's like, Mr. Conroy comes in. He sees them, but that's them making that choice in that moment because we still have the one old person that has remained a child.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're
very,
right.
very, very much. I'm not saying anti-Hook propaganda, Richard's victims. Do you hear me saying anything negative about Hook?
Yeah, you're the one picking.
Saying that this segment feels a lot like Hook. I like this segment a lot. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so seriously, though, it's nice though. It does have kind of like the charming Hook vibe that we did have with the Lost Boys going on here. That's nice.
Oh yeah.
Here's a question for you. Tell me if you had this vibe with this short at all, like tone wise, and just kind of like it felt overall. I had a kind of a combination of two kind of animated things. It has a Don Bluth feel to me, and on primarily, it feels like is a weird comparison. It feels like We're Back, a Dinosaur Story.
That is a very weird comparison.
I know it's a weird, but hear me out. Hear me out. Here's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
So the whimsy, the whimsy feels very Don Bluth-esque, but the doubling down on the whimsy, perhaps, and basically when the kids have, when the old people have become kids, it feels like that radio scene from
oh my God,
We're Back, a Dinosaur Story.
Yeah, a little bit.
It feels like how the kids sound in that, which tangentially feels kind of Don Bluth-ish.
The other thing about
am I making
back
any sense?
Yeah, a little bit, I guess. The thing about the kids in We're Back, a Dinosaur Story is that I always find them super distracting because literally one half of them is Lisa fucking Simpson. So I'm just saying I don't really remember a lot of specifics with those kids just because every time I watch them, I'm just like, oh, it's Lisa. Okay. Anyways. The Don Bluth thing I can totally see, and honestly, by extension, We're Back, a Dinosaur Story very much feels like a lot. Like that movie feels more like Don Bluth than honestly anything that Don Bluth even did in the 90s, including Anastasia. Honestly.
Doesn't it feel like Don Bluth's watching We're Back at Dinosaur? It's like, I could have done that.
It absolutely, it weirdly well, I don't know if he's like, I could have done that because that movie's got that is a wildly mixed bag of a movie.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying he's in the theater and he's saying, I could have done that better.
Oh, right. Yeah, he probably could have, honestly.
Like, dude, Don Bluth's going, Gary, I could have done that better.
We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, another Spielberg joint produced. So with the kids, I want to focus in particular on one actress who's the kid playing the Jewish woman,
right?
Because oh my God, dude, she commits. She commits to the bit.
Spielberg knows how to get great performances out of kids.
But that must have been like the kid in the cast who was like like a theater kid from like elementary school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. She honestly probably had the second best performance in the whole thing after Crothers.
Yeah. So also, I mean, yeah, I've never watched this movie, but there's there's a lot of people have always brought up there's a lot of similarities to the Ron Howard movie Cocoon.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I've never seen it either, but I know about it. Yeah, I could see that.
Because I've seen the parody of Cocoon with Rocco's Modern Life. Do you ever see that episode?
I don't Dragon. Like I said, my memory of Rocco is a little spotty, but
Essentially, they went to essentially the Bermuda Triangle, and then basically like Grandpa, Effer's wolf grandfather became a young guy.
yeah,
Rocco,
that sounds vaguely familiar.
yeah, so Rocco and Heifer became old people, that sort of thing. Anyway, so let's see. So let's talk about just the introduction of the magical can. As you can tell by the image, I was happy I was able to find this because it
is a very good image to represent the short. It really is.
That's like a finely polished can right there. The fact that here's like the kick the can thing. I really wish I could have. Tiki, I wonder if how good is your memory on kick the can on the original episode?
Not great, honestly.
Okay. Well, my point was, I got at the very least. When I think kick the can, I went into this. I was thinking, okay, well, it's just gonna be kicking the can around. But it apparently there's like rules to kick the can, or do you gotta like hide and seek? I don't think that's right.
Right.
I gotta wonder how much of that is like either something they pulled from the original,
or it's like the actual rules. Because we don't know, Dragon. We're not old enough to have actually played kick the can in our youth.
I'm pretty sure kick the. Here's the thing. Yes, Tiki, but by the same token, you'd imagine kick the can's pretty straightforward in logic. It's like
I always thought of it as like maybe like a kind of like a 2-man football game, where it's like you're just trying to get control of the can. I don't know.
I just thought it was like you could play with a pebble taste. You kick it while you're walking. I thought that was pretty much kick the can.
Basically the Hey Arnold interpretation of it.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Kick the can.
Honestly, if I were to guess, I would probably say that the hide and seek element was just put in to like sort of add to the whimsy. And also add to the reveal a little bit.
I just wonder if that was like a carryover from the original or not. That's what I wonder. Like, it's like they hid so like in TV they could cut away and reveal them. Right. All right, let's see. So I'm puzzled by that, but it's what it is. Let's see. So again, we have gobs of whimsy going on here. Again, the kids acting just like the old folks. But speaking of the old folks, though. It was a nice introduction to the old folks. Feels almost, vaguely kind of Green Mile-esque. We're kind of in the
a little bit. Home. It does feel, yeah, for sure. It does kind of have that vibe.
My favorite bit now, Tiki, this one I do hope. I'm really hoping you can pull my bacon out of the fire on this one. The old man with the suitcases, whose family turns away. Do you know if that's Mr. Conroy or is that a different resident?
Oh God, I wish I knew. It would be fitting if that was Mr. Conroy.
Because it's one of three things.
I'm sorry.
Because it's one of three things, and it bothers me because here's the problem. A lot of the old people, they look similar. That's kind of the issue.
Right, right. I was also kind of having that problem a little bit with 1941 with some of the GIs.
My thought was that it's Mr. Conroy, but then again, I wonder if it's Mr. Leo. Mr. Leo is the one who stays the kid at the end. I wonder if it's him, which would track with that character, or if it's just some random oldster.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anyway, a slice of that is a really sad moment. I love the way that moment
plays. I think that is a really good moment to kind of like emotionally pull you in, for sure.
Also, reverse daddy issues.
Oh my God, yes, you're right. Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's kind of like
literally at the start, one of the first things you see.
Also, it's still bridging off of we're like an era of angsty Spielberg. He's transitioning, but a little bit of just like, yeah, Dad, when you're an old man, I'm not gonna let you.
Oh my God. Oh no.
You know why? Because that's how divorce works, sucker. You're going to want to visit. You're going to want to come by, see the family. Guess what? You can't.
Oh, my God.
Not until we say so.
Okay.
Maybe next week. Yeah. Call Phyllis.
Oh
Call
my god.
Phyllis. Anyway. Yeah, that's what her name was in E.T., right? Wasn't it Phyllis?
I think so. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
remember
You're
like
putting
Dad's like on like he's on vacation somewhere. I think he's like with a woman named Phyllis.
Mexico, I think, isn't he?
I think in Mexico, no, you're right, in Mexico. But here's the thing. Actually, what I'm thinking of. I don't know if this is maybe a double pull or not. In Up, the woman's name is Phyllis on
Oh,
like
there you
Russell's
go. There you go.
Russell's father's with Phyllis. But I have to wonder though, did they pull Phyllis from
Oh
from
man.
ET or not? That's anyway. Probably did. I think I'm just thinking about because I saw it. I rewatched it for stuff that we still have not done yet. So anyway, yeah. So but yeah, it's a really sad scene. There's the fact that it's like the implications like this happens every Saturday, almost every Saturday. It's just like, oh, he's gonna go
He
up these
packs his
stairs.
bags, but he never actually goes anywhere.
This is the saddest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, like I said, it is a really good hook.
Yeah. Plus, the old. Also, Spielberg has a lot of reverence for old people, as I think we all do, and so it also shows like we don't like seeing old people kicked around. We like seeing them kick a can, but we don't like seeing them kick around. Yeah. So let's see. So what else should we bring up here before the ending? Anything? I guess. Okay, I guess we should talk about like Mr. Conroy's big moment that we do know was him.
The great Conroy.
Okay, don't cheapen it.
I'm sorry.
Like, come on, man. Anyway, so Leo, Mr. Leo here, he basically is revealed like, oh god, they are young, they are kids. He has this really sincere, great moment of acting where he says, "Take me with you." It's really good.
To the kid who is very much just like the Peter Pan archetype of this story.
Yeah, which of course makes
like straight up like running around with a sword and stuff.
That's the thing. If you're thinking throughout this, like, this feels familiar, then you see that kid, like, okay, that's Peter Pan. Yep.
Yeah.
That's Hook. There's Hook. Where's Dustin Hoffman with the wig? Where's the invisible food? Where's Rufio?
Let's see. Richard's victim says, "LOL, angsty Spielberg is such a savage."
Hey, it was a bitter divorce, my friend.
This is before he learned that his mother was just in love with his dad's bestie.
Yep. Of course, saying, oh, it's really messed up too when you realize, I'm pretty sure she ended up with like the friend from the bank too, which has pulling directly from Spielberg's life in Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, right.
Remember, Catch Me If You Can. It's like I think it's his friend from the bank. Which also, I mean, if it indeed he is from the bank, which I think he might be. If that's the case, that makes it even more perverse. The whole check thing.
Oh man, oh, God.
Anyway, so but okay, I guess get back on things. You're saying the idea to Miss Conroy here, he lightens up because before he was very gloom and dooms, and Dower saying like, "How dare you invite these old folks to leave the house?"
Right.
You'll kill them, like treat them like they're made of glass. All right. So so in the end, he's kicking the can. He's trying to get the Fountain of Youth effect, but he'll learn. Of course, the big moral here's a question for you. The way we went with this story feels like it's more of a moral versus is like a Twilight Zone twist that leads to the moral.
It doesn't feel the most Twilight Zone. I will give it that for sure.
It feels super brief, doesn't it? It just feels.
It does.
Hey,
yeah.
we turn the kids, and we rather instantly realize the lesson here, and we weren't really kind of scared.
That's
by
the thing, Dragon. I kind of feel like if I were to give one tweak to this, I kind of feel like they should have lingered in the realization. The Jimmy Neutron movie realization, essentially, of like, oh no, what are we going to do? There's no one to take care of us,
Yeah.
I like that they get to that point, and I think the little girl with the glasses really sells the performance too.
I just wanted to dance. I could dance as an old lady.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do love the idea that Mr. Bloom he learned to embrace his age and stay his age, but keep the mind young.
Mm.
It's very nice. So then we have our ending where the place has been livened up. They're basically big
He'll
kids.
get it.
He'll get it.
I love that that's basically like a Rod Serling moment almost, like a very friendly Rod Serling moment.
Oh, for sure, yeah. What do you think of the choice not to have Burgess Meredith show up as being just the voice?
That's a good question.
Because it would have been really apparent if we saw him and he's like, man, that's not Rod Serling at all.
Right, and that's kind of why I think they went in that direction, because like with the Forrest Whitaker version, that is honestly probably the best Twilight Zone remake, and nobody talks about it. Forrest Whitaker was very much on screen, but that was like the early 2000s. So I think what the logic for not having the narrator on screen is that, like you just said, like Rod Serling is still very fresh in people's minds at this point. So you got to have the narrator, but I guess Corey Burton wasn't around at the time doing his thing.
Nope. All right, let's see. So then we have full on the trope of the magical black man pulling a Mary Poppins, and
basically, yes.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Oh my god. I do really like the message of this story, though. I really like the whole you always hold on to your youth, and the whole idea of like you're never too old to play, and the day you stop playing is the day you start getting old.
Yeah.
And honestly, Dragon, I'd like to think that based on my enjoyment of theme parks and stuff like that, and just nerd culture, animation. I would like to think I'm living in that sort of philosophy.
Yeah.
I'm a magical black man, y'all.
So okay, here's how you make that even worse. Okay, you have, oh god, he's walking off, and and as he's walking down the block, he says zippity doo dah.
Oh no!
Do a little bit of a scat version of that.
Oh my god! The sad thing is, I could almost see Spielberg pulling that, and I'm glad he didn't.
I'm a magical black man, y'all.
I mean, literally, the last Spielberg movie had the fucking Dumbo crows in it.
It did.
God.
I think Spielberg's trying to tell us something.
Oh no! Oh no! Let's not go down that road right at the end here.
No, God, no. Okay, but the fact is, it's nice that he's still on the journey. He's walking to the next retirement home, which seemingly is around the corner. But
it's literally like right around the corner. I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah.
It feels like hey, I need to I want to grab lunch. I mean, well, there's Burger King next door, but around the block there's McDonald's.
Oh God.
That's the dream, kids. That's the dream.
Let's see. It was in the script that Spielberg was like, okay, I went too far with that one. Cut it.
Yeah, let's cut it.
Also, he says, embrace your age, but don't forgive your father.
I like to think that I really want to think now that kid was Mr. Leo was the old man from before. It'd be like a thing of like, where's my father? Where did he go? Oh yeah, he decided to leave you. What? Well, every time he wanted to come to your house, you kept turning him away. What did you expect?
That is funny. That is funny.
And of course, like, well, fine. You want to know what? Well, why? What happened? He was under your perfect. Okay, fine. You want to know what happened? He turned himself into a Peter Pan, and he left. Okay, and he left his.
He was a very jolly little Peter Pan British kid. He was running around with a toy sword. It was a whole thing.
It's a whole thing, and then he's gonna lose his then we're gonna cast him as the guy who loses marbles in the Hook movie. It'll be a whole thing.
Yup.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's about it, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a short segment. So yeah,
it is. It's probably the shortest segment in the movie. I think.
I really do think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Shit, man. I don't even know what to say now that we're at the very end of Spielberg month, because I kind of feel like final thoughts just on this don't really cut it. But I will say, Dragon, I do think that the lineup that we chose for this month might have been the perfect endpoint in regards to, starting with the Fablemans and then seeing his early works. I strongly, strongly believe that that trio of Duel, 1941, Sugarland Express was very elevated by us rewatching Fablemans like immediately before diving into those films. I strongly feel that they were elevated, and I have a newfound respect for the Fablemans. This is just, honestly, it's a little bit of an outlier, but I think it is appropriate that we cover it. It is literally the only other like Steven Spielberg directed thing that is out there that we haven't covered yet. So, it's an interesting kind of place to end out on with sort of the TV side of things, kind of like mirroring the end of the Fablemans, if you will. But yeah, I'm shit. I will say, Dragon, I will say, just to kind of end things out, I genuinely think Spielberg Month was one of the best endeavors that you and I have ever been on together in our podcasting career. I think, like when we first started, I don't even really think we had the aspiration to literally cover every single movie. Like, basically, when we first started this, it was kind of like a combination of like, yeah, let's play the hits, and then also like, what's available. But going through literally everything, man, it's been a journey. And as I've already mentioned to you, I would not be opposed to doing this with another director who has, sort of a storied career. I think it's been a really, really enlightening 7 years going through all these films.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's look, I mean, pretty much. I suspect we probably did Spielberg Month in the first place. It's like, hey, let's talk about Jaws and Indiana Jones. What want to string it together? Well, I mean, I guess.
Well, no, remember Indiana August was its own separate thing.
Right. Well, yeah, that's it. So in a sense, we did cover the Indiana Jones films, but they were kind of like they're connected again.
Oh.
Well, tangentially connected. The point being, though, we Spielberg was mainly an excuse to talk about Jaws, and look at what it spun into.
Right.
But yeah, it's taken us a long way. I mean, we've definitely, I think, coming to the end of the journey here, I think we've learned a lot about the man. We know probably Spielberg as well as we can know any filmmaker, roughly.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've done like a deep dive, and we've talked about him psychologically. We've talked about him familially. And this month itself is like us breaking down the man's history and his career, and we go full circle to like a full circle event within itself. So it's nothing but it's a big donut of cinema, folks. It's just the fact that we saw him like about to looking all bright and hopeful at the end of the Fablemans too. This is what he went off to do, and it was a really good in there. So yeah, it was it's quite the journey, and it was it's at an end, but things don't matter if they don't end. So
yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Yeah. All right. Well, obviously, big thanks to Richard's Victims in the comments. Also, Little Blue popping up for a brief cameo there. Richard's Victims. I think Nolan probably. We've already talked about a good part of Nolan's filmography already, and also I just don't think his filmography is that deep. Like, I don't want someone whose filmography is like 30-ish films deep.
Well, that's the thing. So Nolan, we did do a thing for Nolan, but we did kind of like, I guess technically half. I mean, that's the thing. So,
I mean, there's definitely Nolan films we haven't gotten to yet, and I feel like we probably will get to them like in their subsequent anniversaries.
That's the thing. We did something called Nolanvember, and the problem is things kind of got basically things got a little sidetracked. We kind of we kind of went with a different theming one year. So the fact is, there are other Nolan movies. I guess the logic was we're just going to wait for more to come out so we can maybe build up kind of more of a revisiting of that.
Zemeckis is an interesting one. I mean, I think Scorsese would probably be the one that makes the most sense. But
Scorsese does make the most sense. Look, Zemeckis is good. The only problem...
Zemeckis is interesting for sure. I think there's a lot of movies with Zemeckis that are much like Spielberg, kind of like, lower tier, but still very interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, shit. I almost don't want to read the outro because that'll make it final. All right. Well, folks, that's the last reel, and the cinematic odyssey has reached its end credits. So it's time to phone home, or an Uber ride from the movie theater. Rest assured, dear viewer, whether or not we'd hung up this director's hat for good, you can always rewatch the man's work. And remember, Spielberg Month.
Do do
Do do do do do do do do do do do. It's Oscar Schindler.